Everybody, just going to talk a little bit on watering your Acer trees, Japanese maples. Just talking about pots today. Now, I usually gauge how damp the compost is by looking at the surface of the pot. Now, the root ball here, as you can see, is a little bit dry. There's moisture there, but it's looking a little bit drier than the edges. There's a little bit moisture still in those edges. So this tree's ready for another watering of the compost itself. Don't water the leaves during the daytime when the sun's out because you can damage the leaves. I usually water in an evening when the sun's gone down, and I was due to water this evening because it's been not last night but the evening before that when the pot was watered. We had a very warm day yesterday which has helped dry this out a little bit quicker. So that's one way of checking your pot, see how much your tree's drinking and how much the sun is naturally drying the moisture out of the compost itself. So get in a daily regime of checking your compost, and you can gauge then how much you need to water. You're looking at basically keeping the whole compost from the top here to the bottom of the pot damp, not soaking wet where it's puddling up on the top. It's lying puddles. You want the whole compost to be damp, but you don't want it to dry out. Okay, you don't want it to dry where it's bone dry, because the roots are going to starve of water and you'll get problems with your tree or they'll die. So if you're going to go on holiday for more than 3 or 4 days, you need someone to water your pots. Longer than that, you'll probably land up with dead trees when you come back after a week or so, especially in the summer. So I'm going to move on to a slightly smaller pot here. Now this is Acer, and as you can see, this pot is the compost is a lot more drier. It's actually a little bit shrunken away from the edge of the pot. That means the tree is thirsty and it's using the roots, and it's drawing all the moisture and all the compost of the pot. So you can tell when this pulls away, the compost is drying out fairly quick. It's also combating against the sun and the heat where moisture evaporates. So the tree is working hard to draw in the water through its roots to supply the tree above the compost. So this tree, that's quite a dry pot. Okay, it's probably a little bit more moisture underneath, but that's still quite dry. So that needs an immediate water. And then we go on to a slightly smaller pot. These very young trees. Now this has been in the shade, so it's not too dried out, that pot. But these smaller pots, you have to water them every day, and sometimes it's going to be twice a day, if not 3 times. It depends how hot it is and where the position in your garden, because these dry out very, very quickly, these tiny little pots. Okay, because there's not much moisture in there. A cup of water in the morning, if you think that's wetting the whole root ball, it might take 2 cups. Probably 2 cups of water. It'll drain through. It'll keep that moist till the evening. If it's drying out too much by the evening, water the same way again. If it's still quite damp in the evening, just 1 cup of water, or water the next morning. Just make sure it doesn't dry out. Okay, so I'm going to just quickly show you how much water to give. Now please bear in mind, these were only watered less than 2 days ago. So I'm going to start with the bigger pot. Now we have a few horse chestnut scale bugs on the bark there. I'm just actually going to wash them off the trunk first, and that excess water is just literally water on the pot itself. I'm going to put on a finer spray. So we've got a bit of a puddle on the surface there. Now in the next moment that water is going to drain through, and it's going to drain an inch or 2 or 3 inches downwards. So we let that drain and go on to the next pot. Now again, you can see those horse chestnut scale bugs there, and white furry eggs. So what I'm going to do is soaking them a little bit, and that's washing them off. Okay, so again we just water the whole surface gently, and you'll get a nice puddle on there. And we'll leave that there and we'll let that dry in. Go to your next pot. The little pots I always give a little bit more of a soaking in. As you can see, that's draining very, very quickly, those little pots. Now we go back to the larger pot. You can see the water puddles disappeared now. So that what you can see now, it's getting quite wet. But that's possibly not enough to really soak in the bottom of the compost in the pot. Or wet the bottom of the pot, sorry, the compost. So again, we let that drain. Go back to your surrounding trees and water them. You want to get the water right the way through. Give it a good drink, because you've got holes in your pot, or you should have, and that water will drain through the bottom. So you're not drowned in a tree. It's not as if it's sat in water. Back to the little one. Right, that's as much for the little one. I'm happy with that. I'll keep it damp for the rest of the day. And basically you just repeat this until you think that you've given enough water for it to drain through to the bottom of the pot. Okay, I'm just about happy with that now, because I know it was only watered 2 days ago. And at the same time you can give the surrounding area of your pot a little bit of a wash. And go back to the medium-sized pot here. There's quite a flood in there. And that's as much as I'm doing, excuse me, as much as I'm doing this morning. And that will keep these damp and in my climate, which is the northeast of England, until at least tomorrow evening, where I will check them again. It sometimes helps when you can see the water actually running on the ground, but because I've only got one hand at the moment, the whole path's wet. But you can water the top and you can see it running through. Just let it run through for a moment. You know you're watering enough to wet the whole compost. You've got to remember as well that the root ball itself at times can be very dense of roots, so you have to give it a good water for the water try and seep into the roots as much as possible. So that's a damp pot there now. So once that goes back on its pot it stands in, that's going to be enough water in there to give the tree a good drink for the next couple of days. But again, when the summer comes, I'm going to have to do this every evening, because the trees will drink more and the heat will dry the pots out much faster. So please remember to keep checking your pots every day, especially after the late spring, summer, where it's warmer, and you'll come into more problems if you don't water them. You'll see in the supermarkets, they have lovely young trees come in there within a few days of standing, they're not getting watered enough, and you'll see the leaves curling up and go brown, and the compost is dry, it's born. They'll only go a few days like that before they literally die. So just keep them damp, and remember, if you go on holidays, get someone to water them for you every evening, every couple of evenings. And again, best not to water the leaves during the sunshine, okay? Because it's like watering paper, and they can curl up and they can damage, especially when the wind's blowing as well. They can literally fry in the sunshine. So when it comes to watering the leaves, on an evening when I water the pot, I like to wash the bark and the underneath and the top of the leaves. Helps to get rid of some of the aphids and the bugs and things. So I like to do that 2-3 times a week. But I'm more concerned about watering the the compost itself, because that's where the tree takes most of its water in, is the compost through the roots. Okay, so it's a little bit on, quickly just touching on water on your acers in pots. Now you can see that's lovely now, that's nice and damp. It's best to give a little bit too much water in the pots than too little, because you've got holes in the bottom with water through gravity is literally going to drain through and drain out. Okay, but you've got to remember to gauge. Now if this was like this evening and in the morning, there's a lot of moisture in there. I don't want to be watering again in the morning time with the same amount of water. That's just going to get it really soaking. Okay, so the tree mightn't be taking in as much as as much water as actually sat in, and you're going to get problems with overwatering. But you'll soon gauge how much you need. If you've got, sorry, I forgot to say, if you've got bark or another medium on the top, gravel, and that makes it a little bit harder if you're not used to watering how much you're gauging. But if you can follow that step of puddling it in, coming back to it, you know, in the warm weather 3 or 4 times, you know you're going to get that whole pot wet. And this little pot's lovely and damp there, and he's absolutely fine. Another question we're getting a lot of queries on is the size of your Acer trees compared to pots. I'm just going to quickly mention that the advice is you always keep them in a smaller pot. Now that tree is a good 18 inches high, and it's quite happy in that little pot. If you put them in too big a pot for the size of the tree, I've been taught that they can drown, or they just don't like it, they don't do well, and they can die. So you're basically trying to keep the tree in as small a pot as possible. This tree will get repotted later on in the year into just a tiny next step up of about an inch. That'll do it for another year or two. That's the way, because if you keep on potting your trees, if you go into a bigger pot every year, every couple of years, you know, by the time your tree gets 6 foot high, you've got a 4 foot diameter pot. You've got to try and keep them small. You know, you can have a 6 foot tree in just a quite a small pot like this, and it's quite happy. So if you're watching this, members of the Facebook group, where you bought a new tree and you're going straight out immediately to pot it in a little tree like this in a big pot like that, you know you're going to get problems. You know, it might last in there. If it doesn't, it might last in there, you know, a few years before you need to repot and things. But keep your pots small. And again, we're seeing a lot of issues where people are buying young trees like this in the spring and then taking it home and repotting the root ball into a newer pot. The tree's grown, it's putting a lot of growth out in the leaves. It's using all that energy to produce new leaves and branching, and it's quite happy. Once you start messing with the root ball, you're stressing the tree by its roots, and it doesn't know what's going on. So it's going to, in my theory, it's drawn all its energy back from the tree to repay the root ball when you repotted it in a new pot. And the leaves and the stems, the branching, they start to die back because the energy is focused in the root ball. So if you want to put this you're best leaving this, if you want to repot it later in the year, once the trees drop its leaves in November, or leave it till early next spring when the leaves are budding but not leafing out, you can repot it then. But if you want this to look nice in a ceramic pot or something like that, just get your new pot, pop this inside the pot, pour a little bit of gravel in the space, and your tree's looking nice in a new pot. If you don't like these plastic pots, it's a pot within a pot. There's another video on YouTube I've done on this last year. So it saves the stress of the tree being repotted at this point in time. A couple of horse chestnut bugs on there. I've damaged one, then it's just okay because I'm going to take the lower leaves off anyway. So just quickly touching on that point of sizes of pots. You know, a tree can go 2 or 3 years in a larger pot, no problem, without having to repot. These smaller trees you have to keep a little bit more of an eye on. There's something else I was going to say there, but I forgot now. I'll come back to us later. Anyway, I hope that's helped with a little bit with your water and resume. If you have any questions, just ask lower down or search on Facebook for Acer Trees Japanese Maples for our dedicated group, and we can help out there. Okay, have happy gardening.